The concert dome on the orbital station shone like a suspended pearl against the dark spread of space. Within its curved walls, guests arrived in elegant streams, drifting past security drones with the calm pride of those accustomed to culture and privilege. They had come for an event that promised to be unforgettable. They had come to watch the great pianist known across star systems for his unmatched skill. The man wore a practiced smile, waving to admirers as he made his way toward the stage. Everyone spoke of him as if he were a legend reborn. The dome's low gravity allowed his cape to ripple behind him with every step, and even this minor spectacle seemed rehearsed. The crowd adored him. At the far end of the hall stood a young woman named Myra. She held no entourage and no gleaming badge of artistic fame. Her outfit was simple. Her hair was tied back without flourish. Her hands remained folded close to her chest, as if protecting a secret meant for no one. She had arrived quietly through a maintenance access, guided by an automated schedule that had mistakenly registered her as a participant. When the oversight was discovered, the event directors shrugged. They assumed she would fail to impress, but the program had already been published. Removing her would risk a public complaint. Allowing her to remain would be safer. In the grand scheme, she was expected to vanish behind the brilliance of the dominant star of the night. The famous pianist noticed her presence when he entered the backstage corridor. He looked her up and down with a polite but thin smile. It was the smile one gives to confirm that another is harmless. She introduced herself with a small bow, and he responded with a short laugh. Out of courtesy, he asked whether she planned to perform. Myra nodded and explained that she had written her own piece for the event. The man chuckled again, louder this time. To him, the idea was charming. In his mind, the bravest amateurs lacked awareness of their own limits. Without intending insult, he dismissed her ability with a wave of his gloved hand. He believed that the audience had come to hear perfection. Nothing else mattered. Outside, the crowd settled into their seats. The dome's acoustics were famous across many worlds, shaped by masters of sound engineering. Every whisper traveled like a small ripple upon still water. As the station rotated above the blue planet below, beams of reflected sunlight moved across the hall. The stage appeared as though lit by a moving halo. Myra stood in the wings with her heart pounding. She knew her place in the order. She was the final act before the star of the evening. This choice had been made only because her name had been listed incorrectly, and the directors assumed placing an unknown before the headliner would create contrast. It would elevate the fame of the great pianist. That was the extent of their concern. When the opening announcements ended, several performers took the stage in turn. A violinist played with precision. A duo of singers filled the air with layered harmony. The audience showed polite appreciation. When the announcer finally called Myra's name, quiet confusion shivered through the hall. No one recognized her. She walked onto the stage with deliberate calm. Her gaze fell upon the grand piano at the center. It was an instrument built with alloys from mined moons and tuned by master engineers. The polished frame reflected her face in a faint blur. For a breath, she doubted herself. She wondered if she truly belonged here. Yet something inside her insisted that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Myra sat at the piano. Her fingers rested on the cool keys. When she inhaled, she felt the station's artificial atmosphere expand in her lungs with a crispness she had never known. Her mind drifted back to her childhood on a small colony world, where the wind carried the gentle hum of energy towers and the night sky held a dense band of stars. She remembered the battered old piano she had played every day. Its keys had been stained, chipped, imperfect. Yet through its flaws she found a way to express the longing she could never describe in words. That old sound had shaped her life. She began to play. At first, the audience listened with passive curiosity. They expected an amateur's hesitant melody. Instead, a sound flowed from the instrument like a living current. Her hands moved with steady confidence, not rushing, not faltering. The opening notes carried the texture of moonlit cities and the rising warmth of dawn. Her composition rose and fell with the pulse of distant worlds. The hall grew silent. Every guest leaned forward without thinking. Myra's movements traced patterns that resembled starlight crossing the vast silence between planets. Her melody expanded into something more than a personal story. It became the sound of a people who had struggled, built, ventured into the unknown, and survived. The dome responded to her. The engineered acoustics amplified every subtle shift. The notes curled along the curved walls like swirling cosmic dust. Her melody gained weight and depth, becoming a vision. It painted images in the minds of the listeners. They felt as though they witnessed humanity rising from small cities to towering habitats, from low orbit to deep space, from fragile dreams to interstellar discovery. Her music gave voice to a truth many had forgotten. Humanity had reached the stars not solely through calculation or technology, but through a spirit that refused to be quiet. The audience felt this truth as her composition carried them deeper. Her left hand laid a strong foundation, like the thrum of engines guiding a vessel across dark reaches. Her right hand created shapes of hope, sorrow, triumph, and unity woven together in a harmony that seemed to transcend the physical limitations of the instrument. Listeners found themselves holding their breath. Their hearts began to match the rhythm. What they heard was not simply talent. It was the sound of humanity at its best. Backstage, the famous pianist watched with disbelief. The casual smile he had worn earlier had vanished. His trained ear recognized the complexity of the piece, the grace of its timing, the risk woven into every measure. He knew how rare such mastery was. How few could transform a piano into something greater than a machine of strings and hammers. His pride faltered. He realized that Nira was not an amateur who had wandered into the event by accident. She was an artist whose passion and perception seemed to channel the very essence of galactic history. The piece reached its midpoint. Mira allowed a brief moment of stillness. Then she introduced a new theme, gentle at first. It evoked the early explorers who had left their home world with courage that bordered on impossible. The notes resonated with longing and the ache of distance. From that theme, another rose, bright and determined. It symbolized the colonies that had grown into vibrant communities. Then came a cascading series of chords representing the challenges that had threatened to tear the species apart. Through it all, her melody insisted that humanity had endured and would continue to endure. The music soared higher. The hall felt charged, as if the air carried faint traces of the first sparks of a distant sunrise. Some listeners wiped tears from their eyes without understanding why. Others pressed hands to their chests. Even the security drones paused in their programmed rotations, as though the logic of the music temporarily confused their sensors. Mira herself disappeared into the experience. She no longer felt the keys beneath her hands. Instead, she sensed the heartbeat of every human who had faced uncertainty and moved forward. She felt connected to something vast and bright, an unbroken chain reaching from the past into a future still unwritten. When the climax approached, she unleashed the final theme. It was bold, powerful, and unmistakably human. It echoed with resilient hope. The sound filled every corner of the dome with triumphant vibrance. It spoke of the courage to create, to learn, to reach beyond the familiar, to refuse surrender even when shadows loomed. In that moment, Myra's music became a declaration. It said that humanity belonged among the stars, not because of superiority, but because of unity and imagination. The final chord rang out like a statement carved into time. Then silence followed. It was absolute. No one moved. No one even breathed for a heartbeat. The music had wrapped itself around the audience with such strength that they needed a moment to remember where they were. As reality returned, the hall erupted with applause that shook the dome. Voices rose in pure admiration. People stood. They cheered until their throats burned. They had not expected such a performance. They had not known they needed it. Mira rose from the bench with calm humility. She bowed once, grateful but not overwhelmed. She stepped away from the piano as the applause continued. She returned backstage, where the famous pianist waited. His expression had transformed completely. Gone was the casual arrogance. In its place stood genuine respect. He approached her and bowed deeply. It was a gesture of acknowledgement, a silent admission that her art had surpassed all expectation. She accepted the bow with grace. When he took the stage for his own performance, the audience listened with appreciation. His skill was undeniable, and his reputation was earned. Yet something had shifted. No matter how refined his technique, he could not recreate the raw truth Mira had shared. The crowd knew this. He knew this. Instead of competing with her, he dedicated his performance to celebrating the very spirit she had awakened. When he finished, he invited her back onto the stage to join him for a final piece. She hesitated, but the audience insisted with thunderous applause. Together, they played a short improvised duet. Their styles merged. His refined precision balanced her expressive vision. The result was a closing performance that left the hall glowing with renewed admiration for human artistry. After the event, word of Mira's performance traveled across the orbital station, then across nearby colonies, and soon across distant systems. Those who had heard her described the experience with wonder. Some said her music carried the voice of history. Others claimed it captured the promise of the future. Many believed she had reminded them of who they were and what they could become. The fame she had never sought found her with gentle persistence. Yet she remained as she had always been, a quiet artist whose heart thrived in the space between notes. The famous pianist spoke of her often in the years that followed. Instead of laughing, he praised her. He said that on the night he first heard her play, he felt as though the stars themselves had paused to listen. He encouraged others to learn from her example. He believed that her music represented the finest qualities of humankind. Many agreed Mira continued to travel across systems, performing wherever she was invited. Her concerts became known not only for beauty, but for unity. People from many colonies and cultures attended, eager to feel the connection her music created. She carried with her the spirit of exploration and endurance that had guided her ancestors. With each performance, she reminded her listeners that humanity's strength lay not in conquest, but in creativity. She showed them that even in a galaxy filled with advanced species and celestial wonders, the human spirit could shine with unmatched brilliance. Her story became a symbol. Teachers spoke of her to students. Scholars analyzed her compositions. Engineers played recordings of her melodies while designing new vessels. Pilots carried her music during long voyages. Her art accompanied humanity as it ventured farther into unknown regions. The legacy of her performance at the orbital dome lived on. No matter where Mira traveled, she remained humble. She cared little for titles or prestige. What mattered to her was that her music reached those who needed it. She wanted her melodies to remind people that they were part of something larger, something filled with infinite potential. Through her art, she carried the echo of humanity's journey across the stars. And so, in the grand expanse of space, a moment that began with quiet doubt transformed into a powerful affirmation. A young woman with simple clothes and steady hands played a song that spoke to every listener with clarity and strength. A famous pianist who once laughed learned to celebrate a talent greater than his own. An audience rediscovered the spirit that bound them together. Through one composition, One performance, Mira awakened the deepest truth of all. Humanity could rise, create, endure, and astonish not through perfection, but through passion and unity. Her music carried this truth across worlds, reminding countless hearts that they belonged to a species capable of wonder. That night in the orbital dome became the melody that echoed across generations. It was the moment when a single song revealed the bright and unstoppable spirit of humankind.